I was just told that this here is a jujube, but here's the thing, the fruits on it are like real small. See that? Look how tiny these little fruits are. They're like the size of, I don't know, like a pea. And it might be that they're unripe. However, on the ground I've been finding ones that look like a ripe jujube. This is what a ripe jujube looks like. Nice and brown. Yeah, it tastes like a jujube, but it's maybe a little bit juicier. Jujubes in this stage can be kind of like a little styrofoamy. Interesting. I think it might be a different species though, because that's really small. Greetings everybody. Today I have 4 different jujubes. And I'm not talking about like the candy jujube. I'm talking about these guys. And where I am right now in Thailand, these you see everywhere. But what's cool here is that you don't just see one variety. If you go to China, you will probably see a jujube that looks like this. This is the Chinese jujube, Ziziphus jubea, or something like that. What's interesting about this is that it's eaten in different stages. So you might find it like perfectly green or yellow at the market, or you might get it with like a little bit of a brown kind of color to it. You might find it completely brown all around, or you might even find it like dried out to be used in teas and cooking and medicines and stuff like that. So that is this guy right here. Very, very important one. So that's if you're in China. If you're in India, you might find this jujube, also known as bear fruit. And that is not bear like gur, that is bear like B-E-R. The bear fruit is a different species. It is Ziziphus mauritania. And similarly, it is eaten in different stages. I do not like this one when it is ripened any more than this. A little bit of ripeness to it is good. If it's green, like too green, it tastes like dry mouth. If it is too brown, it tastes kind of like cheesy. So here's one that turned brown. Maybe this one will be better. No, like a funky cheese kind of taste. So I'm not the biggest fan of it, but when you have it in this stage, which is like a little bit more than green and not quite brown, they could be pretty good. The Thai jujube, and I actually have 2 different ones. These are actually the same species as the bear, but they're quite different. They can get really, really big, like this one here. It almost looks like a green apple, and a lot of times people pick this up thinking it's a green apple, and they're like, wait a minute. Something's a little off. Like at a glance, you know, at the top, on the side, green apple. You look at the bottom, something's missing. They can get ripe, it can get brown, same way, and you might choose to eat it that way, but typically people don't. It's most commonly found like this, or actually a little under this. I got this a little bit more ripe just for comparative purposes. I didn't want it to be like too green. And this is another Thai jujube variety, so also the same species, and as you can see, it's a bit different looking. This one's a little bit more elongated, a little more egg-shaped. Very different looking, each of them, and what's interesting is that just like there is only 2 species here. Like the Chinese jujube and the other jujubes are, you know, different species, but they are often confused. Very often, if you look these up, those Ziziphus Mauritania and Ziziphus jubea are just used interchangeably. Yeah, I've had them all individually before, but never side by side. So this should be pretty interesting. And I'm going to start with the Chinese jujube and then work my way down to the one that I probably am going to like least, which is the bear fruit. So Chinese jujubes, really satisfying to bite into. Once they get a little bit dark like this, or even darker, they start to like lose some of the juiciness in there, and they get like a little light for their size, which is actually a good thing, because when you bite into it, it's sweet and kind of like, I don't know, like a little foamy, like a styrofoam or something. Like it, that's maybe not the most pleasant description for it, but it's satisfying. It's not crisp. It's kind of like a nice light crunch. And depending on your preference, you might want it at a different level, but for me, this is what I like. A little bit of brown on it, and gives you like that nice satisfying crunch. The flavor of it, mild, sweet. It's actually sweeter than an apple, maybe like a 6 out of 10. No tartness to it. Something that kind of like, you know, like marshmallowy about it, like a spun sugar kind of sweetness to it. The Thai jujube, quite different. This one, I mean, you can eat it just like an apple. It's nice, but it's mild. It tastes like if you took an apple, like a green apple, and just kind of like sucked out some of the sweetness, some of the tartness, some of the flavor. It doesn't have like a whole lot of taste to it, but it is kind of satisfying to eat. A lot of people here, what they'll do is they'll put some of this stuff on it, some salt, chili powder. So I'll actually try that, why not? Put a little salt on there. It's not like a flavor explosion with the fruit, but it is satisfying. So if you use this with like a condiment, it's quite nice. This one, the more like elongated one, I'm guessing it's going to taste similar to the other one, although this one is a little bit more yellow, so maybe I can get a little bit more of that developed flavor. Although it's actually a little bit more yellow, it's got a little astringency to it. It's giving me like a little bit of dry mouth. Not terribly, but it's another one where I think a little bit of salt and chili powder will certainly help. Yeah, when you put the salt on it, it kind of like neutralizes some of that astringency. Not entirely, still getting some, but makes it a little bit easier to take. And finally, the bear. And like I said, not always the fan of the bear, but I think this one might be a good one just because of the ripeness on it. It's giving me like a little bit of that dry mouth, not so much flavor to it. It's okay, you know, it's okay, but there's something like lackluster about the bear that I'm not the biggest fan of it. A little bit of an apple taste, but like an apple that's maybe like a little overripe. I don't want to knock the bear fruit too much because people like it. You know, a lot of people like this one, and it's just not really my kind of thing. I prefer the other ones. And yeah, let's put a little salt on that, see how that goes. The bear fruit that I bought, I actually got it from the same place that I got the salt, so I think that was intentional. Yeah, much better that way. What's nice about these is that they're small. You know, you can kind of like pop one in your mouth if you wanted to. A little bit easier to handle than something that's you're going to be taking bites out of. So let's rate them. Final place. No surprise, the bear fruit. It's not my favorite thing, but people like them, and I can kind of understand why. Just not, I don't have the taste for it. Next, I would go with the elongated Thai variety. It's okay, but it's kind of missing out on the factors I like with the next one, which would be the larger Thai variety. This one has like a nice texture to it, like that's kind of like an apple, but like milder. I feel like I can eat like a whole bunch of these with condiments on it and it'd be like very satisfying without being like overly sweet. So I like that for that reason. And first place, the Chinese jujube. I think what I like best about the Chinese jujube is that it can be enjoyed in multiple different stages, and each stage is drastically different than the next. You know, with the other varieties I've had, they can be eaten in different stages, but you have to be careful with it. You might get a stage that you don't especially like. But with the Chinese jujube, I think I like all the stages. I like when it's really like green and crunchy, and I like when it's like fully brown and more like fluffy. And I'm not a big fan of when they're dried out. It's used more for like making stuff out of, but that stuff's even okay too. So yeah, I would go for the Chinese jujube as my number one. But all of these are pretty good and interesting. You know, it's something that you will come across these if you travel. Like if you go to Southeast Asia, you go to China, you go to India, even in Africa, there are jujubes like all over the place, and it's like one of the number one things. People are like, "What is that thing?" Because you'll see them all over the place, but they're so not a thing in the West that when you see them, it'll get you scratching your head. And there isn't really a really clear answer online. It's confusing online. So hopefully this kind of clears things up a little bit. Jujubes are good. If you see one, pick it up. All right, see you next time.
I would like to give a very big shout out to Smarter Everyday, Bill T, and WootBot. They are mega patrons over on patreon.com. This is how I managed to keep this channel going, so it is a huge help to anyone watching who is interested in learning more about how you can help the channel and get some cool stuff in return, like early access to videos, exclusive videos. There's actually over 100 of them already that you can get access to. There's a level where I'll send you stuff in the mail. You gotta check it out. There's more information about this down in the description below.